Before your feet touch the floor, before you check your phone, before the world asks anything of you, how do you feel? Not later in the day, not after work, right now. Because for some people, the hardest part of the day isn't the work, it isn't the pressure, it isn't the people. It's the moment they wake up, the moment their eyes open and a weight crashes down on their chest like life already won. No disaster happened, nothing went wrong yet, and still they feel tired, irritated, defeated, as if their mind whispers, "Here we go again." This was Daniel. For years, he woke up angry at a world that hadn't even spoken yet. Not because his life was terrible, but because his mornings were. And he had no idea that the way he woke up was quietly shaping the life he was living. Nothing changed overnight. Nothing dramatic happened. Just one morning, 5 minutes, changed everything.
Daniel didn't wake up to birds chirping or sunlight gently spilling across the room. He woke up to an alarm, sharp, aggressive, unforgiving, every single morning. The sound alone was enough to tighten his jaw. His eyes would open, but his mind was already racing. I don't want to do this again. Another day, another fight. What's the point? Before he even sat up, his body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled overnight. He lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling annoyed at the light, annoyed at the noise outside, annoyed at a day that hadn't even started. And that was the strangest part. Nothing had gone wrong yet, but inside him, everything already had. Daniel wasn't lazy, he wasn't weak, he wasn't failing. He had a job, a routine, a life that looked fine from the outside. But every morning felt like stepping into a silent war, not against the world, against his own thoughts. He reached for his phone without thinking. Bad news, emails, other people's lives moving faster than his. Within seconds, his mind had gathered evidence. You're behind. You're stuck. This is how it's always going to be. And just like that, the tone of the day was set. Not by circumstances, not by people, but by the first few minutes after waking up. Daniel didn't realize it, but he was practicing something every morning. Practicing frustration, practicing dissatisfaction, practicing resentment. Day after day, year after year, the same thoughts, the same emotions, the same mornings. And slowly, those mornings became his identity. He told himself, I'm just not a morning person. But the truth was deeper. He had trained his mind to wake up looking for what was wrong. And the mind is very good at finding what it looks for. So he found traffic before it happened, problems before solutions, failure before effort. By the time his feet hit the floor, his spirit was already tired. And he carried that tiredness into conversations, into work, into decisions. He didn't notice the warmth of the shower, didn't taste his coffee, didn't feel the bed he just left. Life was happening, but he wasn't inside it. He was surviving it. What Daniel didn't know, what most people never realize, is that mornings are not neutral. They are powerful. They are the doorway to your mind. And every morning, whether you choose it or not, you step through that doorway and tell your brain what kind of day to create. Daniel had been telling his brain the same story for years. Be tense, be alert, expect disappointment. And the brain listened, because the brain always listens. But one morning, not a special one, not a magical one, everything quietly began to change. And it started before his feet touched the floor.
Daniel used to believe his mornings were just bad luck, that some people wake up energized and others wake up tired and irritated, that it was personality or fate or just the way life turned out.
But the truth was far more uncomfortable. His mornings weren't random, they were rehearsed. Every single morning, the brain asks one silent question: what should I focus on today? And for years, Daniel answered that question without even realizing he was answering it. The moment he opened his eyes, his mind scanned for problems, bills, deadlines, regrets, things he didn't like about his life. Not because things were terrible, but because that's what his brain had learned to do. The brain doesn't care if a thought makes you happy or miserable. It cares if it's familiar. And familiarity becomes preference. So when Daniel woke up angry yesterday, his brain remembered. When he woke up frustrated the day before that, his brain remembered. And after thousands of mornings like that, negativity stopped being a reaction. It became a habit. Think about it. If you walk the same path through a field every day, eventually the grass disappears. A clear trail forms. And soon, even if there are other paths, your feet automatically choose the one you've walked the most. That's exactly how the mind works. Daniel didn't wake up miserable. He arrived at misery using a path he had practiced for years. And here's the part most people never hear. Your brain is most vulnerable in the first few minutes after waking up. Before logic kicks in, before defenses rise, before the world distracts you. Whatever thoughts you feed it then set the emotional temperature for the entire day. Daniel was pouring frustration into his mind at the most powerful moment of the day, and then wondering why life felt heavy. It wasn't because life was cruel. It was because his mornings were training his mind to expect struggle, resistance, and disappointment. Not intentionally, not consciously, but consistently. And consistency is more powerful than intention. Once Daniel understood this, something inside him shifted. For the first time, he stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started asking, "What have I been practicing?" Because you don't wake up negative by accident. You wake up the way you've been trained.
Imagine this. Every morning, the moment you wake up, someone hands you a stone. Not a massive one, not something dramatic, just a small stone. You put it in your pocket and go about your day. Then the next morning, you're handed another one, and another, and another. Each stone represents a thought you hold on to, a complaint, a regret, a resentment, a fear. One stone doesn't feel heavy, but after weeks, months, years, your pockets are full. Your shoulders ache, your steps slow. And yet, you don't remember picking up the stones. They just feel like part of you now. This was Daniel. Every morning, he picked up stones without noticing. I hate mornings. I'm tired already. Nothing ever changes. Life is against me. He carried them to work, into conversations, into decisions, and then he wondered why everything felt so difficult. What Daniel never realized was this: attention is a choice, even when it feels automatic. The mind will always follow whatever you point it toward. If you point it toward problems, it will find them. If you point it toward pain, it will amplify it. And if you point it toward gratitude, even slightly, it will begin to see differently. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because the weight changes. One morning, Daniel asked himself a question he had never asked before. What if I don't have to carry every stone? What if some of them could be set down? What if the heaviness I feel isn't life itself, but the way I've been holding it? That thought alone didn't fix his life, but it cracked the door open, and sometimes all transformation needs is a crack of light. Daniel didn't remove all the stones at once. He didn't force positivity. He didn't deny pain. He simply began noticing which stones he was picking up. And that awareness changed everything. Because the moment you realize you're carrying weight, you also realize you don't have to carry it forever.
Not every breaking point is loud. Some don't come with tears or shouting or dramatic collapse. Some arrive quietly. Daniel's lowest morning didn't feel different at first. The same alarm, the same ceiling, the same heaviness pressing against his chest. But something was missing. Resistance. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel motivated. He didn't even feel frustrated. He felt empty. He lay there longer than usual, watching the light creep across the wall. No urgency, no dread, no energy. Just a quiet thought rising from somewhere deep inside. Is this really how I'm going to live? Not a crisis, not a panic, just a question. And questions are dangerous when you've been surviving on autopilot. Daniel realized something that morning. It wasn't that life was too hard. It was that he was no longer present in it. Days were passing, weeks were disappearing, years were stacking up behind him, and every morning felt like a copy of the one before it. He sat on the edge of the bed, feet on the cold floor, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't reach for his phone. He just sat there, listening to the hum of the room, the distant sounds outside, his own breathing. And in that stillness, another thought surfaced, one he had never allowed himself to consider. What if mornings could feel different? Not perfect, not happy, just lighter. That thought didn't come with answers, but it came with honesty. And honesty has a way of opening doors that force can't. Daniel didn't know it yet, but that quiet, empty morning was the moment the old pattern began to loosen. Because sometimes, before life changes, the noise stops.
Change rarely arrives the way we expect. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. Most of the time, it whispers. Daniel heard about the idea accidentally. Not from a book promising miracles, not from a motivational speech, just a passing conversation. A simple sentence. Try gratitude in the morning. Just 5 minutes. He almost laughed. 5 minutes? He had been waking up miserable for years. What could 5 minutes possibly do? His mind immediately pushed back. That's for people who don't have real problems. That's just pretending everything is okay. I don't have time for that. And yet, the idea stayed with him, because something about it felt different. It wasn't asking him to change his life. It wasn't demanding optimism. It was asking for 5 minutes. 5 quiet minutes before the world rushed in. That night, lying in bed, Daniel argued with himself. What if it's pointless? What if it doesn't work? What if I feel stupid doing it? But another voice, quieter, steadier, asked a better question. What if nothing changes if I don't try? That question settled it. The next morning, the alarm went off. Same sound, same room. But this time, Daniel didn't grab his phone. He didn't rush. He stayed still. And for the first time in years, instead of asking what was wrong, he asked himself a different question. What was one small thing from yesterday that didn't hurt? At first, his mind resisted. Nothing came. Then, slowly, the warmth of the shower. A cup of coffee that tasted better than usual. A stranger holding the door open. Tiny things, almost meaningless, almost forgettable. And yet, as he named them, something unexpected happened. The weight in his chest didn't disappear, but it loosened, just a little. 5 minutes passed, Nothing dramatic occurred, the world didn't change, but Daniel stood up feeling different. Not happy, not fixed, just slightly more awake. And sometimes that's how transformation begins. Not with fireworks, but with 5 minutes you almost didn't take.
Daniel expected gratitude to feel emotional, warm, uplifting, maybe even inspiring. It didn't. It felt mechanical, awkward, almost pointless. That surprised him. He thought changing his mornings would require energy, motivation, or belief. But this practice didn't ask for any of that. It asked for attention. Every morning, before his feet touched the floor, before the noise of the world rushed in, Daniel stayed still. No phone, no news, no messages, just presence. Then he wrote down 3 things from the day before that he was grateful for. Not big ideas, not vague statements like my life or my health. Specific moments. The smell of soap in the shower. A laugh that caught him off guard. The way the sky looked for a few seconds at sunset. At first, it felt forced. His mind tried to rush past it. This doesn't matter. This won't change anything. But Daniel stayed, and something subtle began to happen. By naming small, real moments, he was teaching his brain a new skill. Not positivity, awareness. The brain is constantly scanning the world, filtering millions of details down to a few. What you write down is what the brain learns to look for. So when Daniel wrote about the warmth of his coffee, his mind began noticing warmth more often. When he wrote about a kind gesture, his mind began spotting kindness in places it had ignored. Life didn't become easier, it became wider. There was more room to breathe. This wasn't denial of pain, it was balance. For years, Daniel had trained his mind to zoom in on everything that hurt. Now, for 5 minutes a day, he was gently adjusting the lens. And the most important part was this. He did it before the day began, before stress, before expectation, before old patterns could take control. He wasn't reacting to life anymore. He was preparing his mind for how to meet it. 5 minutes. That was all it took to begin rewiring years of conditioning.
The first 10 days were not magical. They were uncomfortable. Some mornings Daniel forgot entirely. Other mornings he sat there staring at the page, unable to think of a single thing. Not because nothing good had happened, but because his mind wasn't used to looking. Negativity had been automatic. Gratitude felt like learning a new language with a tired brain. Some days the list was painfully small. A quiet moment, a meal that filled him up, the fact that the day ended. And there were mornings when the old voice came back strong. This is stupid. This isn't working. You still feel tired. But Daniel noticed something important. Even on the days it felt pointless, he still did it. Not because it felt good, but because he understood something new. Change doesn't respond to motivation. It responds to repetition. By day 5, something shifted. Not emotionally, but mentally. He began catching negative thoughts faster, not stopping them, just noticing them, and awareness creates space. By day 8, he realized something surprising. The heaviness didn't hit him as hard when he woke up. It was still there, but it no longer filled the room. There was a pause, a breath, and in that pause, Daniel had a choice: react or reset. The mornings weren't bright yet, but they weren't dark either. They were neutral. And for someone who had lived in resistance for years, neutral felt like freedom. Daniel wasn't becoming a new person. He was remembering who he was before life taught him to brace for impact. 10 days in, nothing dramatic had changed, but something essential had begun. And sometimes that's all it takes for everything else to follow.
By the 11th day, Daniel began noticing things he hadn't seen in years. Not because the world changed, but because he had changed. The light in the kitchen felt warmer. The hum of the coffee machine no longer irritated him. A smile from a stranger caught his attention, not as a rare occurrence, but as something ordinary, beautiful. He still had mornings that felt heavy. Old habits didn't vanish overnight, but the heaviness no longer had the same power. It was as if the weight of those invisible stones he had carried for years had loosened ever so slightly. He began to realize something profound. Life hasn't been against me, I've just been looking the wrong way. The gratitude practice became a bridge. 5 minutes of stillness, of noticing, of naming simple moments was teaching his brain a new habit. Now the brain remembered joy alongside struggle, warmth alongside frustration, moments of love alongside resentment. Daniel started anticipating small positive things instead of bracing himself for disappointment. And when he noticed them, something inside him stirred, a spark he hadn't felt in years. He laughed more easily. He spoke more kindly. Even challenges at work or at home no longer felt crushing. They felt manageable. It was subtle, quiet, almost invisible. But those subtle changes were the beginning of a revolution. Because transformation rarely arrives with fanfare. It arrives quietly, imperceptibly, in the moments when you choose differently. And Daniel had chosen differently every single morning for 10 days. By day 20, the mornings no longer dictated his mood, they reflected it. And reflection, rather than reaction, is where freedom begins.
By the 21st day, Daniel's mornings felt lighter. He still had bad days. Life hadn't magically become perfect. But something essential had shifted. He was no longer the same man who woke up defeated. When he opened his eyes, he felt space before thought, a moment of choice, a pause that said, "Today can feel different." And it did. The small practice had rewired his attention. The lens through which he saw the world had changed. He no longer reached for his phone to escape. He no longer waited for the world to grant him permission to feel good. He noticed small moments, the aroma of coffee, the softness of his blanket, the quiet music of morning birds. And every moment he noticed, he wrote it down. The gratitude journal became more than paper. It became a mirror of his own awareness. By day 25, he felt something incredible. Life isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about noticing what exists alongside it. The old Daniel, angry, tense, always bracing for impact, was still inside him, sometimes flaring. But now he had a choice. Now he could notice the flare and gently set it down. Now he could pick up moments of joy instead. On day 30, he woke up with no fanfare, no fireworks, just quiet clarity. He was the same man physically, but internally, everything had changed. The mornings that once crushed him now held possibility. The weight of unseen stones had lightened. And Daniel realized the truth most people never notice. Happiness isn't found, it's practiced. 5 minutes a day, consistency over intensity, attention over reaction. That was all it took. And in that practice, Daniel discovered something even more powerful. Not only could mornings change, but so could life itself. By the 30th day, Daniel had discovered a truth most people never do. Gratitude is not a denial of pain. It's not pretending that life is perfect. It's not a magic spell that erases suffering. It's the way we choose to hold life. Even when mornings are dark, even when stress threatens to pull you under, even when life refuses to cooperate. Daniel had been through his share of hardships, failures, disappointments, moments when his heart ached with loneliness.
He realized gratitude didn't remove the stones from his pockets, but it lightened the load. It gave him space, room to breathe, room to see what was good alongside what was hard. Some mornings he still woke up with tension. Some mornings old frustrations crept back. But now he had a tool, a practice that grounded him. 5 minutes, quiet, intentional, real. And in those minutes, he learned a secret. You cannot control the world. You cannot control other people. You cannot control whether life hands you joy or pain. But you can control what you notice. You can choose where to place your attention. And in that choice, your life quietly transforms. Daniel realized that happiness, peace, and clarity weren't found in external circumstances. They were built inside him, moment by moment, morning by morning. Even when life was hard, he could still find the warmth of a cup of coffee, the laugh of a child, the calm of rain on the window, the simple fact that he had woken up and could try again. Gratitude had taught him how to meet life as it is, and that lesson, more than anything, was what changed him forever.
And now, it's your turn. Right now, before you touch your phone, before the day demands anything from you, take 5 minutes. Not for anyone else, not for appearances, just for you. Find 3 specific moments from yesterday that brought you a spark, a taste, a sound, a gesture. Write them down, feel them, notice them. Do this every morning for 30 days. Not because it's easy, not because it magically fixes life, but because it rebuilds your mind. Because your mind is the doorway to your day, and your mornings set the tone for your entire life. Daniel's life didn't change overnight. It changed moment by moment, morning by morning, because he chose to notice, because he chose to practice, because he gave himself 5 minutes. Imagine what your life could look like in 30 days if you started today. The weight you carry can be lighter. The mornings you dread can become your ally. The life you've been waiting for can begin the moment you open your eyes. So don't wait. Don't overthink it. 5 minutes is all it takes. Your new life is waiting in the quiet of your morning. Take it and begin.